Hey everyone, in this video we are going to talk about how you can start to create math quizzes for your classroom. And hopefully this should give you one additional way to assess students and give them some feedback on some of the topics that you're teaching. Hopefully we'll also see how you can go about creating quizzes to make grading a little bit easier for you as well. I also highly recommend that before we continue any further, that you go ahead and watch the tutorial on how to create math worksheets using Google Docs, because some of the same concepts and some of the same tools that we used in that tutorial will also be used for the quiz portion of this current tutorial. And I'll go ahead and leave a link for that down in the comment section below. So the best tool for creating a quiz in Google Drive is, of course, to create a Google form that you can use to assess students. So once you're logged into your Google Drive, all you have to do is go up to New, select a blank Google form. In here, we will call this Math Test Form. Now you'll notice that when you create a blank form, you'll see some different choices up on top here for settings in your form. If you were to check mark the box that says automatically collect respondents, Wheaton Warrenville Unit School District 200 username, it will tell you exactly who took that quiz, but you don't necessarily need to check that because I'll show you an easier way to go about and collecting that information. Now, if you only wanted this form to be filled in one time and one time only, what is nice is that they have added a feature here that allows only one response per person. You can also shuffle the question order for each student. However, I wouldn't recommend checking that box because some of the things that I'll show you later on in this tutorial, there are some programs out there that will grade your quiz for you, and it uses your responses to grade the quiz. So if the questions are in a different order, that's going to necessitate a different answer key for each quiz. So I wouldn't really check that box. As we get started, I really recommend that there's a series of 3 questions that you always use in every single quiz or form that you create, because it'll be much easier later on when responses start coming in for you to sort through those responses, as well as to use third-party programs to grade them. So the first question that I always recommend people use is just a simple last name. All right, and make sure that the question type is text, and we'll hit done. The second type of question, if I hit duplicate, is first name. And same thing with the text and required question box checked. Now the next, let's go ahead and change that real quick. It's misspelling. Now the next question is email address. Most third-party programs that work with Google Forms need one of your questions to list an email address so it knows where to send the results of the quiz to. And then all we have to do is hit done on that. So again, those are your first 3 questions that you should pretty much start every form with to make things a little bit easier. And again, probably the easiest way to go about creating questions for your quiz is to use things that you've already created, either as a PDF file or a Microsoft Word document. And the way that we're going to go ahead and add those pieces to this quiz is using the same techniques that we used when we created a worksheet with a little bit of a twist. And that is to use the awesome screenshot extension found up here on my toolbar. So if I want to get a question that I used in a previous worksheet, I first have to go ahead and upload that worksheet. And again, to upload the worksheet, you hit New, and then go to File, Upload. Find that file on your computer and upload it. And here I have a test worksheet right here. And again, once you click on that, you should get a preview that looks something like this. Now, if we click on our awesome screenshot capture, and then we go to Capture Selected Area, we can highlight the part of the question that we want to insert into our quiz. And we'll click capture again. And again, Awesome Screenshot comes with a number of tools that will allow you to annotate your picture. So if you needed to add anything to it, you can go ahead and do that through the extension. Now, something that's a little different than the worksheet tutorial is that in the worksheet tutorial, I could just drag this, hover over the tab, and then plop it right into the worksheet. You can't hover and plop things into forms, so you will need to save this before you can insert it into your quiz. But luckily, Awesome Screenshot has great Google integration, so you can go ahead and save it to your Google Drive. So I just click the Google Drive button. I decide what I want to call it, and I can call it test question. And then I can hit save. So as you can see, the screenshot that I just saved is now in my Google Drive. And if I come back to my form and I go ahead and I select insert image, I go ahead and find that image on my Google Drive, and here it is. And then I'll go ahead and insert it. Now you could give it a title. You don't necessarily have to. Really, this is just a placeholder for the picture. Now the question should always come underneath the picture. So here you could just repeat the same question that's up there. What other information do you need to be able to prove that these two triangles are congruent? And then of course you would want to select text. And then you could also make that a required question. Now this is just an example. I would recommend picking questions that have definite answers that you know are going to be uniform in how they're answered, because when you use a program to grade your quizzes, if there's any variability in how students are going to answer the question, it's really going to lessen the effectiveness of the grading program. So try to pick questions that have a definite answer that's going to be answered the same way by each student. Now again, taking screenshots of material that you already have created is probably the easiest way to go about creating quiz questions in a Google form. However, GMath, the same add-on that we talked about during the worksheet portion of the tutorial, also has an add-on for Google Forms, and it's going to work the exact same way as it did for the worksheet portion. So again, if you haven't seen the worksheet portion yet, I would recommend that you go ahead and watch that first and then come back here so that things make a little bit more sense. So if I come up here to add-ons, just like I did in Google Docs, I can get add-ons and search for GMath for Forms if I don't already have it installed, but I do. And I can select Create Math Expressions, which is the first thing that we'll go over today. But as you can see, it has the same three choices that it did for the worksheet portion of the tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add-ons, GMath for Forms, Create Math Expressions, and again, we should see the little sidebar appear on the right-hand side of the screen, and it should look just like it did when we created our worksheets. So here it is, and once it's done loading, you'll see that things pretty much look the same as they did before. Now the only difference is that the first thing it asks you for is a question title. So we'll just come up with some test questions right here, and this particular test question will be, which of the following is the quadratic formula? Now I'm going to go ahead and erase the default, and again, there are pre-built expressions and equations in here. If it does not have something that you need, you could always use the DOM equation editor, which we talked about previously, to go ahead and put your equations in there. However, the quadratic formula is one of the pre-made equations, so I'll go ahead and click on that. And you'll see that in the preview, you'll see what it looks like. But I'll go ahead, and this is important, if it's going to be multiple choice, go ahead and put your answer choices in the actual picture itself. Okay, so we'll make that choice A, and then we'll go ahead and click New Line, and then select B, and then we will re-add the equation, but we'll change things around. So you could change things like the symbol, the constants, and so on and so forth. And just for good measure, why don't we make there a choice C? Now, choice C is going to be none of the above. If you want to put in just text and nothing that has to do with equations, make sure you click on the button that says regular text. And then you're going to type it in between these two brackets. So instead of text, I will go ahead and write C, none of the above. And again, you have exactly what your question will look like. And then now that I'm done, all I have to do is come down and hit the insert button. So you'll notice now that the question's been inserted into my form, and there's a little area here for students to go ahead and answer the question. Now the default input for them to answer is as a text answer, but we've formatted our question as multiple choice. So we'll have to come here and go to Edit, and instead of text, we're going to have to choose multiple choice, and then go ahead and answer, I should say input our answer choices down here. Now I recommend that you try to use multiple choice as many times as possible when you're creating quizzes, especially if you're going to use a third-party program to grade those quizzes, because multiple choice ensures that each answer input is going to be the same for each student, making it much easier for the program to go ahead and grade for you. Now I don't necessarily need to do multiple choice for each question, but what I do want to show you is if you are not going to do multiple choice for your question format, to at least leave some sort of help text that lets students know how to format their answer. So for this particular question, I can type in find the intersection of the following two lines. And my help text is going to be format your answer as, x comma y as a point. So here I can just type in my equation just like I did previously. And I can go to new line, and I can go to x plus y equals 4. And here it is down here. I click insert, and it will go ahead and insert that into my form. Okay, you can see that our problem is now inserted into our form, and the help text that we put in before now appears as help text when you hover over the picture. So as I hovered over the picture there, you see that the help text appears. Now we can't always rely on students to hover over a picture to see that help text. So another area that might be very helpful to put that help text would be in the section where the students answer the question itself. So if I click on the edit button, I can go ahead and put that same help text in again. Answer format should be as an ordered pair, x comma y. And now hopefully students will see that, put their answer choices in accordingly, and then if you go ahead and use a third-party program to grade this quiz, you should hopefully get some pretty uniform answers so that it goes ahead and grades each student's quiz the right way. Now the next type of question we can add in GMath for forms is to go ahead and create a graph. And again, it's going to look hopefully just like it did for our worksheet tutorial. And here we can put our question as, what is the y-intercept of this line? And here we can put in our equation, and we can say y equals 2x plus 4. And again, we can change the zoom region. We can add other functions depending on what type of shape that we want to graph. Or we can go ahead and plot individual points. But here we're just going to graph this particular function, and we're going to go ahead and hit insert. So again, it's been inserted into our form, and again, we can add help text there if we want, because you might have some students who actually put y equals something, and you might have other students who just put in the number. So if you want your answers formatted in a certain way, make sure you go ahead and put that help text there. Another nice feature in the graphing portion is the ability to plot a series of points. So if you had a series of points that you wanted to put on a coordinate system, you can go ahead and type those into the box right there. An example might be in statistics if you are having students discuss correlation coefficients. So you could plot a series of points and then click this box that says graph the line of best fit for your points, and then have different multiple choice answers that have different R values. So based on what the scatter plot looks like, they would pick the appropriate R value. So that's a pretty nifty feature that you could also use in the graphing section of GMath. The last feature we're going to cover in GMath is create a statistical display. And just like in the worksheet area of GMath, there's three types of statistical displays that you can go ahead and create: histograms, bar charts, and box and whisker plots. So maybe for this example here, we can go ahead and type in how many hours of TV does the 75th percentile watch. And here I can go ahead and type in my data points. And then I can go ahead and give my graph a title. And for the sake of example, we'll go ahead and just do a box and whisker plot. So here I've hit preview, and you see what my box and whisker plot looks like. And then now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit insert, and it might take a couple of seconds, but it then should put it into our form, which it went ahead and did. So let's assume now we had a quiz that we wanted students to start taking. One of the easiest grading programs that's out there for teachers to use is called Flubaroo. Now, Flubaroo, along with other grading programs out there, only work with spreadsheets. In a form, though, when people start answering your particular form, it automatically generates those spreadsheets. So to get to that spreadsheet, all you have to do is go ahead and click on View Responses. And when you click on that, it should open up the spreadsheet where all the responses are going to be pre-populated into. So in order for Flubaroo to grade your quiz, you need at least 2 submissions into the quiz first. One of those submissions, the first submission, has to be you, the teacher, filling out the quiz so Flubaroo knows which one is the answer key. Then as students go ahead and fill out the quiz, once they're done, you can go ahead and go into the response sheet and check the answers and have Flubaroo grade it for you. So now that we have 2 test submissions, one that I as the teacher filled out and one as a test student filled out, we're going to go to add-ons, we're going to go to Flubaroo, and we're going to hit grade assignment. So once Flubaroo is ready to load and ready to grade your quiz, it's going to ask you to go through all of the information on your response sheet to make sure that it's correctly identified which questions are identifying questions and which questions are actual quiz questions. Now, within those grading options, you can award between 1 and 5 points, or you can elect to skip that question for grading purposes altogether. But everything looks pretty good for our purposes right now. So if everything looks good, we're going to click on Continue, and then Flubaroo will go ahead and then ask you which of the answers should be used as the answer key. And again, it's always good that you, the teacher, take the quiz first, because that will be the first one that you select. So we're going to select the first one, hit Continue, and then Flubaroo is going to start grading our assignment. And again, depending on how many students you have in your class and depending on how many kids took the quiz, this could take a little longer. Okay, so it gives you some tips about how it goes and grades your particular quiz. So we can go ahead and view grades. And you'll notice on the bottom here that it's added another tab to our response sheet called Grades. Up in the upper left, it gives you a little summary response of all of the quiz questions. But down here, it shows each student and how they went ahead and answered each question. So you can actually differentiate and see which questions seem to be the toughest for students to answer. Okay, so if I go back now and go to add-ons in Flubaroo, I can actually either review a report and then I can use that when I'm planning a follow-up lesson, or I can click on email grades and it will email the student a copy of their grades based on the email address they added to the third question on the quiz. So that right there are the basics of using Flubaroo, and Flubaroo is probably the easiest grading program that you can use in a Google Sheet. There are other ones out there, the second most popular being SuperQuiz. SuperQuiz is a little bit more robust than Flubaroo, however, it's got a little bit heavier of a learning curve, but Flubaroo at least is a good starting point, and hopefully now you can see how you can create a quiz using GMath and then go ahead and self-grade it using Flubaroo.